Everyone's been accused of something they didn't do, but not everyone spends time in prison for it.
You're scheduling me out again. And deep down it hurts.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 falsely convicted people.
Yes, are you kidding? Is this a joke? Or, what are you doing?
For this list, we're looking at people who are actually convicted of a crime they did not commit, not just people who are unjustly accused, like Joan of Arc. Number 10. Randall Dale Adams.
I do not like looking down the barrel of a pistol. I do not like being threatened.
The first person on our list became the subject of the influential documentary, The Thin Blue Line. Randall Dale Adams was convicted of the 1976 murder of a Dallas police officer. But, in actual fact, it was an acquaintance named David Harris that shot the policeman when he pulled Harris over in a stolen car. Harris, however, insisted Adams had shot the officer, though Adams was not in the car at the time.
All they want to do is talk about how they're going to kill you. That's the only thing they cared about. That's the only thing they talked about.
The prosecutor in the case withheld evidence, as detailed in the documentary, which also included Harris's later confession. Adams received no restitution for his sentence due to a technicality.
She said if there was ever a hell on earth, it's Dallas County. She's right.
Number 9. Arthur Allen Thomas.
Did you murder Harvey and Jeanette Crew?
No, of course I didn't.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that.
It's tragic to be convicted falsely of a crime you didn't commit. It's even worse when it happens twice. New Zealand farmer Arthur Allen Thomas spent time in prison for the 1970 murders of Harvey and Jeanette Crew. After his conviction was quashed, he was tried and sentenced again. His conviction was largely based on the presence of a rifle shell found in the victim's garden 4 months after the murder. That shell was planted there by police officers to frame Thomas. In 1979, Thomas was finally pardoned and freed. However, the police officers responsible for his arrest were not punished.
And this has never been rectified to this day.
Number 8. Stephen Avery.
Stevie did do a lot of stupid things, but he always owned up to everything he did wrong. He never said, no, it wasn't me.
No one would have described Stephen Avery as an upstanding citizen. The Wisconsin native had already been jailed for burglary and animal cruelty when he was arrested in 1985 for the brutal sexual assault of Penny Bernstein. Avery ultimately served 18 years for that crime, until DNA evidence secured his release in 2003.
We firmly believe that we had the guilty party at the time.
Welcome home! This case led the Wisconsin state legislature to pass a bill to help prevent wrongful convictions, and led Avery to sue those he found responsible for $36 million.
Everything what they did wrong should come back at them.
Unfortunately, before that lawsuit was settled, Avery was arrested for the murder of photographer Teresa Halbach, a crime that formed the basis of the controversial 2015 Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer. Again, Avery remains steadfast that he is innocent.
He goes on to say, I am really innocent of this case, and that is the truth. The truth will set me free.
Number 7. Dewey Bo Ella.
There's no hope. No matter what you accomplish in there, no matter what you do in there, you're still in that box.
Bo Ella was arrested in 1977 for the murder of a 92-year-old woman, but was released due to a lack of evidence. Then, in 1983, the former boxer was rearrested and charged with the murder, based on information provided by 2 convicts.
He needed a miracle, and we needed a miracle to find something to prove that he was innocent of this 30-year-old murder.
Unfortunately, the convicts fabricated the information to secure their own release from prison. Bo Ella served 26 years, steadfastly proclaiming his innocence.
I ain't allowed prison to make me bitter. My attitude was that I had to make myself happy.
And though he was a model prisoner, he was denied parole because he wouldn't confess to committing the murder. Finally, additional evidence was uncovered which demonstrated he was not guilty, and he was freed.
I said, it's finally over. It's finally over.
Number 6. The West Memphis 3.
Miss Kelly told police he watched 18-year-old Damian Eccles and 16-year-old Jason Baldwin brutalize the children with a club and a knife.
The vicious 1993 killing of 3 8-year-old boys in Arkansas drew national attention. 3 teenaged boys were arrested for the crime, and it was implied that they had committed the heinous acts as part of a satanic ritual.
We, the jury, find Damian Eccles guilty of capital murder in the death of Chris Byers.
Damian Eccles, Jesse Miskelly Jr., and Jason Baldwin were subsequently tried and convicted. But the case was filled with problems.
I don't really understand how they convicted me or got me in here, or really how they just arrested me in the first place, you know?
The crime scene was not properly secured. The coroner's work was substandard. A major witness recanted her testimony, and there was evidence of inappropriate jury communications. In 2011, after a series of documentaries on the case, the 3 convicted men were released.
We can still try to clear our names. The only difference is now we can do it from the outside instead of having to sit in prison and do it.
Number 5, Darryl Hunt.
That witness told police when he and Mrs. Sykes' attackers saw each other, they both left this place in opposite directions.
In 1984, Darryl Hunt, a 19-year-old African-American, was found guilty in the rape and murder of Deborah Sykes, a white woman in North Carolina. This verdict came from an all-white jury based on witness testimony.
We, the jury, unanimously recommend that the defendant, Darryl Eugene Hunt, be sentenced to life imprisonment.
There was no physical evidence linking Hunt to the scene. In 1994, DNA evidence cleared Hunt of the rape charges, but he remained in prison almost 10 more years.
While the state's theory on rape and sexual offense is somewhat weakened by the DNA evidence, its case overall is not fatally flawed.
Finally, the man who really did rape and kill Deborah Sykes confessed to the crime. Hunt went on to become a powerful spokesperson for the need for a more careful and accurate justice system, before tragically taking his own life in 2016. Number 4, Rubin Carter.
Here comes the story of the hurricane, the man the authorities came to play.
A boxer with the nickname Hurricane, of Bob Dylan music fame, Rubin Carter spent 20 years in jail for a 1966 triple homicide at a bar in New Jersey. Circumstantial evidence seemed to indicate Carter and a friend were the culprits, but it was a questionable case.
We, the jury, find the defendants, Rubin Carter and John Artis, guilty on all counts.
There were inconsistencies concerning the physical evidence and witnesses who placed Carter elsewhere at the time of the murder. 2 key witnesses against Carter later recanted their testimony.
Those lies show the guilt not of Rubin Carter, but of a corrupt police force and the prosecutor's office.
Finally, in 1985, a judge freed Carter, noting racism and concealment in the prosecution's handling of the case.
I was 29 years old when they arrested me, and I was 49 when they released me.
Number 3, Alfred Dreyfus.
Everybody said, my God, we've got a spy in our midst.
Alfred Dreyfus, a French officer of Jewish background, was accused of being a spy and passing on valuable military information to the Germans in 1894. Found guilty in a secret military trial, he was sentenced to life on the infamous Devil's Island in French Guiana. In 1896, the real spy was identified, but the military court refused to convict him.
I accuse the Minister of War of having concealed decisive proofs of the innocence of Dreyfus.
What followed was an outcry over the obviously anti-Semitic treatment afforded to Dreyfus. A second trial again resulted in a verdict of guilty, despite the merits of the evidence. Dreyfus was pardoned and eventually exonerated, but the case created a national scandal for France.
The statue was banished to a distant corner of the Tuileries Gardens.
Number 2, Gerry Conlon.
Hell couldn't have been any hard, because this actually was a living hell.
The conviction of the Guildford Four brought renewed attention to the British-Irish conflict in 1974. Gerry Conlon was one of 3 Irishmen who were convicted alongside an English woman of bombing a pub in Guildford, England,
which left 5 dead and dozens injured. The prisoners became known as the Guildford Four.
In addition, Conlon's father and other relatives were also falsely convicted of being part of the plot.
They asked me my name. I told them my name and I was punched in the face. They broke my nose.
Conlon maintained he had been tortured into making a confession. This was later validated when it was also learned that the police had held back important evidence.
I've been in prison 15 years for something I didn't do, for something I didn't know anything about.
The falsely convicted Conlon was released after 14 years. And his story was dramatized in Daniel Day-Lewis's film In the Name of the Father.
I'm an innocent man. I spent 15 years in prison for something I didn't do.
Before we reveal our #1 pick, here are some honorable mentions.
When the Supreme Court reversed Sam's conviction, we hoped that would be the end of it. But the state of Ohio wasn't going to let him off the hook.
You are a free man. Congratulations.
I just had to stay strong. I knew I was innocent. I knew nobody out there was listening.
And you heard Tim say, "No, I ain't raped nobody. Y'all got the wrong person."
To catch them, how far was this detective willing to go?
#1, the victims of the Salem witch trials.
Was there perhaps a casting of spells? Was there?
Famously dramatized in the play The Crucible, the Salem witch trials were a horrendous miscarriage of justice. In 1692 and 93, a group of young girls began accusing neighbors and townspeople of being witches.
If you expect God's mercy, you must look for it in God's way, by confession.
This created a mass hysteria that engulfed the town. Before cooler heads prevailed, 20 people, including 14 women, were executed.
Hang the witch!
Hang her!
Scores more were accused, and their lives irreparably damaged. It's assumed that many took advantage of the situation to intentionally profit from the misfortune of their fellow citizens.
Well, you know, that woman who lives down the road that we've never liked terribly much, I mean, she does seem a little odd. Is she a witch?
Although some of those convicted and or killed were later pardoned, the stigma remained for many families.
I'm not a witch, I'm not a witch.
But you are dressed as one.
They dressed me up like this.
Do you agree with our list? What other people who served time for crimes they didn't commit deserve to be on this list?
I've done nothing wrong.
For more enthralling top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Sometimes it just makes me sick. Just hearing about it and what they all did.